Do you like tips? They have a surprisingly racist history. Well, so does the Democratic Party. They're the ones that created Jim Crow laws in the South and erected all those damn Confederate statues that you love to argue about.
Tipping is actually pretty f***ed up. When you tip someone, you usually feel like you've done something good.
Technically, I feel righteous and superior because I'm not the one working in a restaurant. Oh my god, I'm kidding. Please don't spit in my food.
But really, the American tipping system was specifically designed to keep freed slaves poor and give rich white people cheap labor. And there's a strong argument that it's still accomplishing that today.
It's accomplishing keeping freed slaves poor? Got it.
Rich white people.
Not every business owner is white or rich, but I love your broad statement. It's just great. Also, if you own a restaurant, you probably aren't rich. In fact, according to the Restaurant Resource Group, average pre-tax profit margins range from 2 to 6%. That means that after paying for expenses including payroll for staff, rent, food, alcohol, glassware and dinnerware, point-of-sale computer systems, utilities, credit card fees, exterminators, and on top of that, taxes, owners are left with very little. I need to stop here for a moment and introduce you to labor activist and social justice warrior, Saru Jayaraman.
You know, I've been leading this restaurant worker movement for the last 15 years, and people are always afraid that I'm gonna disapprove of their dinner choice, or I'm gonna launch a revolution between dinner and dessert. And my husband, Zach, is here, and even he will disappear right after dinner, right when he thinks I'm gonna talk to the manager about the restaurant's wages and working conditions.
Wow, she seems awesome. Much of the information in the Tipping is Racist video is based on articles written by Jayaraman and reports from her organization, Rock United. While doing research for this video, I read a bunch of those reports and I learned a lot. For example, did you know that some of the language to describe both the qualities desired for new hires as well as the individual characteristics leading to turnover could be construed as racialized code words? Words like good attitude, work ethic, drive, clean cut, presentable, warmth, aura, and personality. Yep, you heard that right. These are racialized code words. Whew, that is some SJW bullshit right there.
The end of the Civil War meant rich businessmen lost a huge source of free labor. Business owners still wanted no-cost workers and extra coins in their pockets. So the railroad and emerging restaurant industry fought and won the ability to employ newly freed slaves without paying them wages. Instead, they forced them to live off of tips paid by customers.
To sell her narrative that tipping is rooted in racism, Jayaraman often refers to the Pullman Railroad Company, which specialized in luxury rail travel.
They were all African-American men, hired by luxury sleeper car innovator George Pullman soon after the Civil War, to cater to the demands of well-heeled travelers.
Not going to sugarcoat anything here, Pullman porters faced racism from customers.
Some good days and some bad days. But you take the good with the bad.
And were required to work 20 hours a day on 4 hours of sleep. It wasn't easy work.
3 hours a night.
So you worked 21 hours and you slept 3?
That's right.
In spite of it all, working as a Pullman porter was considered to be a prestigious job, and they did pretty well from the tips they earned from rich travelers. But Jayaraman claims that the Pullman company didn't pay them wages.
The restaurant industry and the Pullman Train Company, both of which wanted the right to hire newly freed slaves and not pay them anything and let them live on customer tips.
She also makes that claim here in a Rock United report stating, the Pullman Company, which hired former slaves as porters and dining car waiters, with an expectation of civility to white patrons who would tip them in lieu of wages. She supposedly sourced this from the book Tipping, An American Social History of Gratuities. But I'm not about to spend $217 on a hardcover copy to prove her otherwise. So I guess we'll just have to take her word for it. Or we could take a trip to the local library and see for ourselves. In 1915, the Pullman Company had some 6,500 porters who received about $27.50 a month in wages. And another passage illustrates how wages increased for the porters over the years. Also, the book Rising from the Rails, Pullman Porters and the Making of the Black Middle Class, page 123, shows that the Pullman porters did in fact make a salary. They were paid, and paid from the beginning. The book also states that former slaves were grateful for a steady salary for being out of shackles and being able to hurtle across the landscape in his luxurious sleeping carriages. They cherished the job and stayed a lifetime, with many passing it down to sons and grandsons. And before you ask, the tipping book cites an informal survey that shows the difference between wages made between black and white waiters working in restaurants. Anyway, I bought that book Rising from the Rails and learned that the Pullman Railroad Company is widely credited with contributing to the development of the black middle class in America. And in spite of a ton of adversity, the porters were able to provide for their families and even send their kids to college. They also organized and started the first black labor union in America, which increased their wages, improved their working conditions, and played an important role in the civil rights movement.
Specifically designed to keep freed slaves poor.
So to make the case for her anti-tipping agenda, Jayaraman thought, oh, people hate racist things, so let me connect tipping to racism. Then she falsely cites sources thinking that no one would ever call her out on it. And on top of that, takes a group of people who worked to create better lives for future generations of African Americans and removes their dignity by painting them as victims. It's disgusting.
Go to jail!
Industries that allowed tipping were generally excused from paying their workers the minimum wage. I know what you're thinking.
That's pretty fair.
Wow, that's terrible.
Oh.
The federal minimum wage for tipped workers is only $2.13 an hour.
But they don't only make $2.13 an hour, because they get tips from customers. Waiters and waitresses are paid a lower wage in an attempt to level the playing field. A server making $200 a night in tips doesn't need to make a $15 minimum wage on top of that. It's just not fair to everybody else.
And in 17 states, businesses can legally pay workers that low.
Because those workers are getting tips from customers.
And it should come as no surprise who gets screwed the most.
Wait for it.
Minorities and women.
Of course they are.
People of color make up 40% of tipped workers, and women are more than 60%.
But studies show that women generally make more in tips than men. Servers in general make more in tips than they would working for minimum wage. Being a waiter or waitress is considered to be one of the best paying positions in the restaurant. So how are they getting screwed the most? Anyway, Saru Jayaraman hopes that if she screams racism and sexism over and over again, that it will somehow change the restaurant industry. But it won't. The only thing that will change the industry for the better is robots. You can't be racist or sexist to a robot, and they certainly don't accept tips. Thanks for watching, everybody, and a big special thanks to all of my subscribers and Patreon patrons. And if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button and check out some other stuff. Thanks again for stopping by, and I hope to see you next time.